Here are my notes. Here's my audience. And my visual aid. So, most people know about Isaac Newton and things like how the apple fell on his head to kind of really start like his interest in like the laws of gravity and motion. But what many other people don't know is that he also was one of the main, and I would argue the most important founder on the most influential form of math in day-to-day life, known as calculus. Sir Isaac Newton was born in January 4th, 1643 in England to a farmer. He was a farmer's son. And there were many failed attempts of Isaac Newton's father to try to get him into like the farming business, but he was way more focused on the sciences and was very enveloped with the ideas of modern philosophers at his time. And he started his schooling with like a more basic curriculum, but this is where he honed in some of his intelligence and really focused on the math parts. In 1665, a great plague came through England and which forced him to go back home from the boarding school that he was already in. And this is where he started to develop some of his theorems on calculus. And he was a very secluded man during this time and throughout all the rest of his life. He was very egotistical, some may say, and he really just did not like to be around others, especially people that he saw as inferior to himself. He rose to power in many government positions actually in England at this time, in places like legislature, because of like his sheer intellect. And this is also around the time where he developed the 3 laws of motion, as we know. The first one, second one, and the third one, which the most important one and the most famous one is that every action has a positive and equal reaction. And that's what's taught many times in school and what's learned by many. And History.com even states that the first law of motion and the second law of motion, while they're not explained as much, but one like the second law, which is force equals mass times acceleration, is one of the very first things that you learn in many like physics classes in colleges and high schools, and is the basis of like how things move. Then he started to develop calculus because he knew that the speed of an object that was falling increased, but that he had no way of figuring out why or what was the basis of the reason that accelerated and didn't just fall at a equal speed. He developed calculus to focus on rates of change, which kind of gets into like the acceleration. And he started his work with binomial theorems. They gave him methods to find the derivatives and integrals of transportation and normals, which then allowed him to find infinite series. And Leibniz, Gottfried Leibniz is another guy around this time who rose kind of in like the scientific world. He is one of the other founders of calculus, but he really focused on the mathematics side, while Newton really only wanted to like use calculus to further his advancements in physics, which allows us to like really like study like things like velocity and acceleration and position in day-to-day life. And then I want to get into a little bit more about like how calculus is applied. Like I said before, it's really just like calculus is the language of all physics and sciences. Like if you didn't know or understand the very basics of science or of calculus, you wouldn't be able to advance anywhere in like scientific fields. But even in other things like engineering, all forms of engineers use calculus in their day-to-day lives to really just hone in their skills on that. Sciences and even finances, like credit card companies, they use their loan, they use calculus to like find like interest rates and stuff like that. Kind of plays into like the rates of change of things. And even like medicine, like all doctors, they need to have basic understandings of calculus so that they can use their findings and the things that Newton found to like save people's lives. Telecommunication systems, credit card companies, like I said before, and just like all of physics. And I've used calculus in my day-to-day lives now, as I'm in AP Calculus, to use like first and second derivatives of different functions to find like the velocities of different moving objects. We call it like particle accelerations and stuff like that. And even like a more modern thing like in software development for people who are like software engineers who are trying to develop video games, they have to use what Newton found in his calculus findings and use that to input game physics and model it after real world physics. And up here we kind of have like, this is Gottfried Leibniz on the left side, and we have Newton here, which are like the two founders of calculus. And
It's just that Gottfried mostly focused on like the math portion, and then Newton used his findings to correspond it with physics in the real world.
And so, yeah,